Hey everybody, it's Corporal Speculation, and today I think that we really need to talk about a ugly reality in the United States of America. Losing a political election and bid for presidency right now comes with the possibility of you and your allies going to prison. It's wild, but honestly, that's where we're at, And there's been some headlines lately that kind of back this up, and I want to go through just a little bit of the recent history, last couple of years, to make my case that this is where I'm at and explain why we all need to back away from this position. So recently, Eric Swadwell was referred to the Department of Justice for mortgage fraud, amongst other issues. I don't know if this guy's guilty or not, but what I can say is that if Kamala Harris had won the election, I highly doubt that he would be looking at a criminal probe. And at the same time, Donald Trump went in and he pardoned a bunch of his allies. A lot of people are screaming lawfare right now, and I see it. That is lawfare. That's where we're at. But it's where we've been at for a little bit, but not so long that I don't think we could come back from it. And I think that's what we need to do, is we just need to have a conversation, look at the facts, and talk about how we come back from this. But the reality is this goes back to the last administration. There were a lot of prosecutions. The FBI kicked in Donald Trump's door. Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, Michael Cohen, Mike Flynn, Mark Meadows, Jeffrey Clark. Trump's already gone after James Comey, John Brennan, Letitia James, Adam Schiff has been talked about, and John Bolton. I mean, look at the outcome of all those cases. I'm not talking whether or not any of those people are guilty, but are we going to pretend that that's not bipartisan, political, legal, lawfare prosecution? Is that we're really going to pretend that? Are we really going to pretend that it's just a one-side issue and actually my side is good, but the other side is bad? Fine. If you can't go that far, I understand. But at least will you grant me, from my perspective as just a patriot who's concerned about the health of my country, that from the outside looking in looks like bipartisan political lawfare? Do you see my perspective? Can you at least get how I might feel the way that I do about it? This is really scary stuff. And it's not nothing, because you're talking about the most powerful human being on the planet with control of the most people who can legally deploy violence. And you're telling them that, hey, if you lose this election, you're going to jail. How many times can you run that experiment before they say, you know what? There's a national emergency, and I think it's not the right time for me to go to jail. I think I should probably just stay the most powerful person in the world for a little bit longer. Don't worry, it's just an emergency. I'll give the power back in a little bit. And then the power never comes back, and we don't have a country anymore. I feel like a lot of people, they don't get how bad this can go. We live in the United States of America, and it's a wonderful country, and we have become used to the political norms. But part of the political norms and part of a peaceful exchange of power is not then turning around and abusing your monopoly on violence to go after your political enemies. And that's what we're talking about. And once you replace the democratic norms with force doctrine, and you say, might makes right, I've got the power, I'm sending the guys with the guns to your house, you can very quickly hit a rock bottom that most American civilians have absolutely no idea what that looks like. If you've never been in a gunfight, you don't know what that looks like. Never been pinned down by a sniper, you don't know what that looks like. You don't know how ugly humans, men, can be. Especially men that are using the force doctrine to express their power. And again, people are listening to this, they're thinking, oh, that's hyperbolic. That's not what's going to happen here. That's crazy. Why? Because our collapsing system is going to protect us? We're all the same species. This is the norm for 99.99999% of human history. I get that you feel insulated, but this feeling of insulation is because someone put insulation up, right? And the house needs maintenance. We need to put more insulation up, right? We need to be moving away from force. This needs to be a tactic that we don't use. And all the commentary that I'm seeing on it is really just kind of blanket condemnation of the pardons from both parties. And Trump just recently went in on November 10th and pardoned, Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, Sidney Powell, Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, Paul Manafort. And Joe Biden, on his way out, pardoned Anthony Fauci, Liz Cheney, the January 6th community, Hunter Biden, his brother, members of his family. And people are like, my God, that is so terrible. That is so unprofessional. Why? They're doing it because there's a legitimate shot that there will be political prosecutions against the people that they are allied with or love as members of their family. That's where we're at. That's what we're doing. And I'm not saying that if somebody in Congress or in the Senate commits a real deal crime, they shouldn't be held accountable. Of course they should. But you can't even hold them accountable if everybody looks at these lists and they go, okay, well, that's obviously political persecution. Because it obviously is. When one president wins an election and sends the FBI to the guy who lost house and has them rifle through their wife's underwear drawer, that's not normal. That's not something you do in a healthy democracy. That's banana republic stuff. That's third world stuff. That's force doctrine stuff. And that's dangerous. That's where we're at. And we're really running into a bad direction. And I just, I don't think people are really going to like this. I know a lot of people are going to see this and they're going to be angry that I'm hitting both sides with it and acting like it's a bipartisan issue. And that's how I see it. I'm a patriot. I believe in this country. I think we can come together. I think we're going through a rough patch, but America's best days are ahead of us. But we got to start talking about solutions and ways to bring the temperature down. And in my opinion, the temperature's not coming down if we are prosecuting our political enemies. And even if there's that it looks like that's what we're doing, even if there's just that appearance, we are in such a dangerous spot. Maybe Eric Swadwell did commit these crimes. I don't know the guy. I'm not his accountant. I have no idea whether or not he did it. Maybe he did. But the fact of the matter is that when the majority party can't have a justice department that goes after a sitting member of the minority party because everyone immediately assumes it's a political prosecution, we're already in a very dangerous spot. We're already there. When somebody leaving power feels the need to issue a blanket pardon for his family because he fears political retribution, we're already pretty far down the slippery slope. We're already in dangerous territory. And again, how many times can you run this experiment? How many times? Really, think about it. Before people stop saying, I don't know if we should get power back. I think we should maybe hang on to it. I think that if we run out of power, then, they're going to come put me in jail. How many people in a majority party's administration are going to throw their bodies on the gear of the system to protect democracy when they honestly believe that there's a 50-50 shot that they're going to go to jail on the other side of this? And I'm telling you, don't underestimate the power psychologically of looking down the barrel of that gun, especially when you're in the 1% super rich elite and you're thinking about, maybe I go from driving around on private jets and living this amazing life to a prison cell. Of course, they're not going to want to give power back. And there are places on this planet where they're having those issues. Look at Israel. I'm not saying that Netanyahu is holding on to power because he's afraid on the other side of this presidential campaign he's going to go to jail. But it does kind of seem like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that's not happening. I don't know. I don't know one way or the other. I don't live in the guy's heart, so I can't tell you. But that's the situation that they're in. Do we want every single president to feel that pressure? Or do we take a breath? Do we step away? Do we reestablish democratic norms? Right? Do we stop going after each other? Maybe get a bipartisan FBI. Maybe reduce the scope of the FBI. Let states handle this kind of stuff. Do we frown upon it when our party uses lawfare? These are the steps that we could take to move back towards a healthier democracy. We just can't accept this. This cannot become the new normal, because I'm telling you, if this is the new normal and every president from here on out thinks that if they lose power, them and their allies and their family members are going to go to jail, then we're not going to have too many more presidents. That's the reality. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being hyperbolic. You guys tell me. Hit me with a like, a comment, a subscribe. Let me know what you think. And like I said, I hope that nobody takes this as I'm saying that politics should be above the law. Everybody should be answerable to the law. I'm just saying that it's obvious when you read down the list of who's been prosecuted under what administration that this legal political lawfare is becoming too normal, and we got to cut that out. That's not conducive to a healthy democracy. That's all I got. You guys have a fantastic Friday, and I'll catch you on the next one.